Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by Old School Lane, producing various content from blogs, videos, and podcasts discussing about movies, TV shows, video games, and everything else in between since 2011. You can check out the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, Overcast, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and YouTube. We're associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Arun Mehta Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I am here with a very special guest. I want to introduce yourself.
Hi, folks. My name's Clancy. I'm the host of On the House podcast and reviews, and I'm also starting up a new show with my friend Allison. It's called They're Calling Again. It's going to be taking an episode-by-episode look at Frasier.
Awesome. So yeah, we actually had Klancy on the show over 5 years ago when we discussed about Naughty Dog's anniversary, going all the way from Crash Bandicoot to The Last of Us.
Was it really 5 years ago?
Yeah, it was that long ago. Remember, that's when I think it was 2013 or 2014. That was when The Last of Us came out at the time. So it was almost 6 years ago.
Oh, geez, I feel old.
I know, right? But yeah, it's good to have you back, and it's been a while since you've been on the podcast, but nonetheless, we are so happy to have you and discussing about something that you're very familiar with. So today we're going to be discussing about the Mighty Ducks trilogy. We're referring to the trio of films from Disney, focusing on the Ducks hockey team, which ranged from 1992 to 1996. So the reason why we're talking about this is because Disney Plus had recently announced they're going to be doing a new series on it called The Mighty Ducks Game Changers, and it's going to be focusing on a new generation of kids playing as the Mighty Ducks, and we're going to be featuring some old characters as well, such as Emilio Estevez returning for his role as Coach Gordon Bombay. So that should be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised he's coming back because I know towards the end he kind of resented that this was his best known character and he feels like he'd done better movies than this. But hey, it's exciting times. So I hope that they're able to keep the magic of the original films, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand where Emilio Estevez is coming from because, he's been in The Breakfast Club, same Elmo's Fire, The Outsiders, the Young Guns movies. So the fact that, it's like, oh, I'm known for this Disney movie series about a hockey coach who is down on his luck and is going through like all these rough patches, and I have to train a bunch of, losers who are going to be the best hockey team. I mean, I can understand that he personally in his career does not think of that as like his best film, or even one that should be the most known. But I mean, at least he is known for something.
Yeah, for sure. And he's definitely known for The Breakfast Club and like the Young Guns films. I mean, those are some of my favorite films as well. But I can understand at the time, you want to be taken as a serious actor, and Disney still had that reputation of being Disney.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if we're talking about like the early 90s when they were in their Renaissance age.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting to look back on this because I've only seen the first movie like a long time ago, and I had never seen any of the other movies. So this was kind of like a interesting way of getting myself back into this for the first time in almost 30 years. So I'm actually curious, how did you first get introduced to this franchise?
So I got introduced to this franchise just, as a little kid, you love sports movies, and this film actually is what made me a hockey fan, which is now my favorite sport. And actually, I cheer for the real life Anaheim Ducks. That's the team I root for. Cheering for them has more to do with the actual players than this movie, but this is what got my foot in the door. And I know it's true for a lot of other people. This is how they got introduced to hockey.
Yeah, I can definitely see that because when you think of like major sports films around the 80s and 90s, you think of baseball like A League of Their Own, or you think of football like Rudy, you think of other sports, but or even like the Karate Kid movies or the Rocky movies. But yeah, hockey is definitely not something that I would immediately think of. I mean, when I think of a hockey movie, I mean, I guess Mighty Ducks, yeah, Mighty Ducks will probably be like the first things, especially, people from our generation who grew up with
Mhm.
these movies. I think that with looking back on these films, I would say that it was definitely akin to what was going on at the time, in which there were a lot of sports movies that were for kids. Like you had the Karate Kid trilogy, which was, where you have Daniel, fighting karate alongside with Mr. Miyagi. You had other movies that would kind of like follow a little bit afterwards, like Little Giants and The Big Green, and and various and even like I guess The Sandlot would kind of count as that, even though that's a little bit more like Stand By Me mixed with sports movie, but that's beside the point. So yeah, I think that with looking back on Mighty Ducks, I think that it's kind of it definitely does feel akin to what you would see in a 90s Disney movie, but there's still some things that I think is worth noting for sure, like of how you have the person like Coach Bombay, who is like down on his luck, who was going through a lot of struggles as a kid, and who was not able to write something that he wanted to do for a long time, and then he's thrust back into it and not having remotely interest of it at first, but then as time goes on he starts building himself towards building the perfect team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know the original writer, he kind of said he wanted to do Bad News Bears, but for hockey.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And this is also the same guy who had written other movies such as Heavyweights and Knocked Up and The Wedding Singer.
Wait, he
I no,
wrote Knocked Up?
well, I mean, no, he appeared in the movie. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, okay.
yeah, but he wrote a lot of Adam Sandler movies like Little Nicky and Mr. Deeds, but he also wrote other movies such as Without a Paddle and Heavyweights, which definitely I can feel like very similar, akin, especially with Heavyweights, where it
Hmm.
does kind of have like that rebellious kid kind of film. And I guess Mighty Ducks would be very similar to that, in which it's about these rambunctious kids who just so happen to be a part of the worst hockey team around. So yeah, I guess we can talk more about this. So yeah, I'm actually curious about like your personal thoughts on the first Mighty Ducks movie.
Well, with the first one, I mean, obviously I got my nostalgia goggles on pretty heavily, but I think for a film for the younger generations, it still holds up. I mean, a younger audience. I mean, my only real issue with it now is as an adult, with the actual hockey being played, I just sit there and go penalty, 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 penalty.
Oh yeah, for sure. I see that a lot whenever that when you watch a game and you're like, wait a minute, that's clearly a foul. Why didn't they call that? But yeah, I can see, if you were to take, the hockey parts of it very seriously. But also, I think that what makes this movie really interesting is that they all have issues. They all have personal issues that they have to overcome. Even with the coach, who's supposed to be the one who leads these kids into victory. So yeah, it definitely kind of reminds me a little bit of maybe Mickey from Rocky or Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid, in which is you have this old, worn down coach or teacher in this case, and you have him going through his struggles and problems, and then the only way he's able to overcome that is to, to overcome his obstacles and to help his team get the victory.
Because the whole reason he has to coach the hockey team is he's required to do community service.
Yeah.
And because he's gotten so many DUIs that he doesn't have his license anymore, and that was his punishment, which it's kind of a holdover from, I guess, when they originally were writing the movie. The first draft was a whole lot darker and less Disneyfied.
Yeah, it reminds me of a similar case with Hocus Pocus, in which that movie was originally supposed to be a lot darker. But then Disney was like, no, you can't have it this way. It's too dark. So let's Disneyfy it. So yeah, I'm not too surprised, especially when you start off with Mr. Bombay, who is a clear drunk and going around and driving irresponsibly and then having to go through community service. It's like, yeah, that's an interesting way of how to, kickstart a Disney movie. Just, seeing our main coach going around being drunk, getting arrested, get community service, and have absolutely no cares whatsoever with taking care of these kids and, training them to be like the best hockey team around.
Yeah, for sure. And an aspect of this film I really think works in the favor is just the cast of kids. They're all memorable, different members. You get their personalities. There's not kid 3 that blends into the background. They all give them something to do.
Yeah, they do have something to do. I mean, you have Tommy, Tammy, you have Fulton, you have Adam. So yeah, you have all of these kids who come together, and they each have their own personalities. Whether the personalities are stock cliches or, like, oh, here's the tough girl. Here's the kid who doesn't want to skate and he doesn't care. Here's the kid who's the best athlete around. So yeah, I can understand that, some of them just maybe seem as cliche. But I think that for the time period, it's pretty serviceable.
Yeah, I mean, the time period and the age group that this was targeting, I mean, this is going to be the first time kids see a lot of these cliches, so.
Right. Yeah, and then of course you have like the cliche of, we need to be able to, win the championship, and we need to be able to, go up against the tough, team that is unbeatable, and then we need to be working together so that we can be able to, win the title. So yeah, you do see that a lot in these kids' sports movies at the time. But again, it's like you were saying before, it's definitely akin to what it was back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any like memorable moments or like quotes or like characters that you prefer or that you really resonate with?
I really love the old guy who owns the skate shop there. He's just kind of a mentor character to our mentor, and I don't know, something about that character. You see him in a lot of different movies, but I always kind of got a soft spot for him.
Sure, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do also like the fact that when Mr. Bombay is looking back on his past, where he wasn't able to complete the shot that he was able to get the opportunity to win the championship because he's struggling with his father's death. And so this is essentially retaliation for being able to write something that he wanted to do for a very long time by training these kids to not do the same mistakes that he did.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say, speaking of memorable quotes, the part about missing by 1/4 of an inch and it's gone on, that's kind of became a saying in hockey in general, so that's definitely one of the memorable ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the flying V, it's such an iconic thing. It makes no practical sense. In fact, during an all-star game, NHL players that probably grand total make $100 million. Tried it and they couldn't score doing it, but it's just so iconic. You
Yeah,
gotta love it.
absolutely. I mean, it's able to take, an animal such as a duck and make it into a full force contender when it comes to hockey. I mean, I know that there's like the Mallards, which is a much more tougher name, and maybe the Drakes, which is another tougher name, but something like ducks. I mean, you would hear that as like, oh, you want to crack up laughing, but they're able to take Mighty Ducks and make it into something a little bit more of a serious contender for saying, yeah, we may have like a silly name, but we can be able to kick your butt in hockey.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I would say that yes, it does have some faults when it comes to like, using like a lot of the cliched characters and parts of the story seem pretty familiar, especially if you watch a lot of sports films in the 90s. But I would say that this is definitely one of the better ones. I mean, I would say that it's very inspiring, and I think that some of the characters do work, and you definitely feel like they're a team. And I do think that the overall climax with the championship is also really well done as well.
And plus, with some of the kid characters, you'll recognize a few of the actors today.
Oh yeah, like Danny Tamborelli, who plays as Tommy, and you guys know him for Pete and Pete, all that, and the Magic School Bus, and various other things. And yeah, there's a lot of people that you would recognize when you watch this. It's like, oh yeah, I knew that kid when I used to watch this show or something like that. But yeah, I think another one that I think I didn't even remember, like, oh yeah, like he's part of this, like Elton Henson. He was nowadays a lot of people know him for the Daredevil Netflix series or Pollux from the Hunger Games, but yeah, he actually is in this movie and he plays as Fulton. So as for like the girl Jane Plank, I wasn't able to find her information online. I couldn't see if she did any other acting afterwards.
She's done a little bit of stuff, but mostly, from what I've seen, she's just been very, especially in recent years, active with making appearances and whatnot at cons and whatnot.
Sure.
Actually, kind of a funny story with her being the only girl at that age. Apparently, a lot of the kids had crushes on her, and she took full advantage of it. She fully admits that she made out with a couple of them.
Oh, really? Wow.
Kind of a funny story in hindsight.
Yeah.
And another interesting story is, I like the relationship between Coach Bombay and Charlie's mother.
Yeah.
But during the kissing scene, apparently it was about 40 below, and their lips actually got stuck while they were doing it. They had to stop filming, get them some hot water to get them unconnected.
Oh, wow. Really? That's crazy. It's almost like a Christmas Story in which you had Flick having his tongue stuck in the pole, except for real.
Yes, for sure. And you're also stuck on a person, so it makes it extra awkward.
Yeah, especially if it's a person who's not your significant other.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But no, yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. I had no idea about those stories, but yeah, so I would say when it comes to like the trilogy of Mighty Ducks movies, this is the one that a lot of people bring up the most. And even people like myself, I mean, we didn't even see the sequels. I don't know why. Maybe they weren't as like heavily available on TV as the first one was. I'm not sure.
Well, I also think that by far this is the best. So if you're gonna show one, this is the one you go to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess watching the others, I can definitely tell, especially when we get to the third one, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. So, yeah, let's talk about the second one. Yeah, so basically it takes place right after the first one, and, Coach Bombay, he's a star in the minor leagues, and he's going to go into the NHL, but then, oh no, we have a injury, and now he has to go back, and he has to, work at a shop, and then eventually, the team sucks again, and now he has to go back and be their coach. So, basically a return to status.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say this, as a little kid, this was my favorite one.
Mm-hmm.
But now, even with nostalgia goggles on, this is not a good movie. I'll fully admit it. This is kind of hard to watch for me.
Sure. Can you explain why?
Honestly, it's because instead of being the lovable underdogs, they're kind of acting like jerks when they're on the ice. there.
I,
It's like, I go ahead.
oh, no. I was going to say, yeah.
Like, there's a scene where they go by a bench and they're like hitting the other players on the head with hockey sticks after scoring a goal. It's just kind of like these same actions would make them the villains in the previous movie. So it's like that just makes it difficult for me to really enjoy it, you know?
I understand, and I completely agree with you because now I could understand for maybe a full circle moment where the Ducks were so cocky that they've won so many games and even the championship that they just have the victory over their heads and they feel that they can be able to do no wrong. But with the fact that because of their overconfidence, I feel that this is like the opportunity for them to really get themselves more grounded, especially when the other team members, they still feel, sore about humiliation from previous losses as well as some newcomers coming along.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I can understand that if you are part of a team that has been very successful and then some newcomers come along, I can understand that people would be like very taken aback saying, "Oh, how you can't just show off. I was the best teammate before you came along, or your ways of playing the game is not what I'm accustomed to, so I don't like you." So yeah, I can see why this may have been kind of like an awkward direction for some people, especially when watching this movie and you were already accustomed to the characters that were already in the first one.
Hmm. Plus, with the exception of the other Bash brother and I'm blanking on his name, but the SNL guy and Good Burger guy.
Oh, the SNL guy and the Good Burger guy.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Keenan Thompson?
Yeah, Keenan Thompson. Sorry, I wanted to call him Peel, and I knew that wasn't right.
Peel from Key and Peele.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that would be that would be hilarious if Key and Peele made an appearance in this movie. Oh my gosh, but no, I know what you're referring to.
Those are kind of memorable characters, but the rest are very stock. Like, you got a Texan who talks like this, and he ropes people.
Whoop-de frickin' do.
Yes.
Yeah, and I take it that because that this movie was, I guess because this was the sequel, they really needed to up their stakes. So there's actually a lot more celebrities in this movie than there was in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have Christy Yamaguchi, Greg Louganis, and Wayne Gretzky in this movie.
Which, I have to imagine this takes place on an alternate world, because if you had Wayne Gretzky saying that he supported the American team and not the Canadian team, oh, there would be riots in the streets.
Yeah, there would be. That I usually would take things with a grain of salt, but yeah, that was kind of interesting. I mean, even I'm as a not a hockey fan, already know who Wayne Gretzky is, and I can assure you that him, saying an American hockey team is better than something from Canada would be considered sacrilegious. But yeah, I think that with this particular movie, I mean, you have another team this time around. You have Iceland or something like that, and they're kind of almost similar to the first one, in which like they are like the best team around, and then they defeat the Ducks so easily. And I mean, and then they have to like refine their teamwork and be able to prove to themselves once again that they can be able to be the best team around.
Yeah, the Iceland team was originally, they were actually supposed to be Russians, but they were very much a stand-in for what the Soviet teams were back in the 70s and 80s, where they just dominated the world scene.
That makes a lot more sense now that I think about it, because I mean, if you guys know from like geographical history, Iceland is not very cold. It should be Greenland that's supposed to be the one to have ice. The reason why is because there was like, oh, we need to convince people to come live in this location. Well, we don't want to say Iceland because Iceland, nobody would be interested in it. Or was it Greenland? So yeah, I think that Greenland is the cold one, and Iceland is not really that cold.
Turns
Yeah.
out Vikings were very good at marketing.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I could definitely see this being originally Russian. I mean, they kind of did this with Cool Runnings, in which you had like the Germans, I guess. But I mean, this was 1994, so we were slowly breaking out of, the Cold War like 3 years prior. So I take it that maybe they wanted to have Russians, but then they were like, yeah, that was still too fresh in our minds with the Cold War. Let's just make it Iceland, even though that doesn't make any sense.
And I will say a notable change in this film from the last one is that the uniforms go from kind of the anthropomorphic duck that you see in the first one to the masked look, which was actually the look for the NHL team.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is Disney actually purchased a real NHL team. And
Yeah.
between these movies, it's the same time they owned the Angels for Angels in the Outfield.
Yeah, I remember that.
Uh, but a condition of them getting a team is they had to make 2 more movies
Mm.
and a cartoon series.
Oh, the animated series. Oh, geez. Okay, so I decided not to talk about the animated series for this podcast because I'm going to do a video on it. I saw all 26 episodes and just kill me.
Oh, you sat through it?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I thought I tried watching the first 2 episodes just in case you wanted to talk about it. And I couldn't do it.
I don't
I couldn't
blame
make
you.
it through.
I don't blame you. If you want to briefly talk about it, we will. But just wow, I've never seen the show. All I know from what I've heard from people when I was like a preteen was that this was one of the shows that killed the Disney afternoon lineup. And now that I've seen it, I'm like, I don't blame you. It's like sometimes I feel like I want to apologize to Bonkers.
Yeah, especially when you find out that this was literally a contractual obligation. It's not something anyone actually wanted to do.
I can definitely tell because oh my gosh, like the concept of ducks in outer space playing hockey is the most ridiculous thing that they could have came up with. Like I thought that, shows based off of movies to animated series like with a stretch like I don't know, like Emperor's New School or you know like I don't know, Lilo and Stitch the animated series in which it's kind of like Pokemon in a way in which they focus on a new creature every single week. It's like, yeah, they're a little bit off, but hey, I mean, at least they kind of connected with the show or, the Hercules animated series in which it's like a midquill that took place during the training of Hercules, but Hades already knows Hercules is alive, but no, that is nothing compared to Mighty Ducks the animated series.
We'll put it this way, folks. The first 2 episodes they released as a movie,
Yes.
and it's credited to Alan Smithy, which, if you
Yeah.
don't know, is the name directors put there if they don't want to ever be associated with it.
Yes, exactly. Oh man, if you watch a movie or a show and it's directed by Alan Smithy, you are in for a
Run.
rough run. Run. There you go. I couldn't have said it better myself. Just run. Right. Ugh. Anyway, but we'll get to that. So yeah, I don't really have much to say about the second movie unless you want to talk about that or we want to move on to D3, The Mighty Ducks.
Uh, I think we pretty well said what there is to be said. Only other interesting fact that I can think of is because of this movie and the actual team, 90% of the NHL jerseys sold for like 3 years in a row were Mighty Ducks jerseys. So,
Oh, wow.
marketing wise, it definitely had the impact they wanted.
Yeah, I would say that if I were to think of, a hockey team that was like really popular for kids, it would definitely be Mighty Ducks because, I mean, unless you're a hardcore hockey fan, I couldn't think of anything else.
Well, it's kind of funny when the team was announced in the NHL. Sorry, like I said, I'm a diehard fan
No,
of
no, no,
this
please,
team.
please go ahead. I know nothing about this, so I'm really interested to know.
So the rest of the like, if you were a kid or teenager, like you instantly loved the logo and whatnot, but with the name Mighty Ducks and their their logo originally, like then it was looked down upon. Like, what is this garbage coming in here. I mean, now it's been so long that people accept, okay, that is a pretty kick-ass logo, but the original team, when they got together, they purposely drafted the toughest and meanest players just so people wouldn't push them around because of the name.
Who would take Mighty Ducks' name seriously? It's like, oh, it's if it was Mallards or Drakes, like I said, then sure, it would be taken a little bit more seriously. But Ducks, it's like, yeah, you need to be able to overcompensate for the fact that the name is not akin to like something like really tough, especially if you're talking about one of the toughest sports in like toughest sports ever. Like we're talking about like people bashing themselves in ice or in a wall and then they bleed, and all that, hockey pucks that are really hard rubber flying into your face or to a body part, which can leave serious bruises or knocked out teeth. Yeah, we're talking about a serious sport. I mean, not like rugby tough, but still tough.
Well, they still had bench clearing brawls back in the 90s before they made them against the rules, so it was crazy naming it Mighty Ducks after a kid's movie,
Sure. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, who would think, I guess, like you were saying before about like the Angels and, with the Angels in the outfield, it's like Angels, I can understand, being like a serviceable name for a baseball team.
Mm-hmm.
But with hockey, it's like, you have these tough names, you have the Oilers, you have
the Bruins.
The Bruins, yeah.
Which, it's very telling that one of the first things that happened when Disney sold the team is the new owners shortened it to just Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, first thing that they did.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. But I think that with the legacy that the movies left behind, when you hear Ducks for hockey, people now automatically know what it is. And same thing with what you were saying about the logo. It definitely looks akin to like the Jason Voorhees' mask from Friday the 13th, except shaped like a duck.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know why they thought that it looks kind of lame. I'm sure they thought, oh, it's a duck and with the hockey mask, it looks kind of dumb. But I think it actually looks pretty cool.
Well, now it's considered one of the best logos that have ever been in hockey. But at the time, it was kind of... There's a lot of gatekeeping in hockey. It's like one of the slower sports to be cool with newer ideas and whatnot.
Yeah, when was the last time that you would, hear about hockey and all these new ideas and people gravitating to it?
Exactly. I mean, there's a reason that it's fourth in the most popular sports. I mean, it's gaining popularity more and more every year. Like right now, it's the highest viewership it's ever had in the States, but
I guess maybe I think with this new Disney Plus series that's going to be coming out really soon, I guess that's going to be even more skyrocketed with a new generation being introduced to it.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that'd be actually really interesting about where this show is gonna, what's gonna happen. But we'll talk about that at the end. So let's talk about D3 Mighty Ducks. So yeah, this is the last one in the trilogy, and the only one of the trilogy that wasn't fully written by Stephen Brill. It was also written by Jim Bernstein as well, with the ideas from Kenneth Johnson and Jim Bernstein. So I am familiar with Kenneth Johnson. He also wrote shows such as Bionic Woman and The Incredible Hulk TV series from the 70s with Lou Ferrigno. So going into this, the movie is about. So you have Mr. Conway and Charlie being awarded the scholarship to Eden Hall Academy. And that is the same academy that Mr. Bombay attended as well. And so... yeah, basically we go for school. It's like, yeah, I mean, like, I guess this is kind of makes sense with, them starting off going to an academy. It kind of almost reminded me a little bit of like, hey, let's take Boy Meets World or Saved by the Bell and put hockey in it.
Yeah, which, I don't know, it's kind of how they say in certain shows, once you go to space, you can't come back.
That's true, yeah.
It kind of feels that same way. You're going from a worldwide tournament to school.
Yeah, I can see why some people just felt it was like a giant step backwards. It's like, we have this major tournament and now we're just going back to basics. It's like, oh, I guess I can understand why people kind of didn't like one of the reasons why people didn't like Rocky 5. It's like, oh man, we just went from, Rocky taking down Clubber Lang and taking down Ivan Drago in Russia, and now he's broke and he has to go back to Philadelphia and train some punk. He's broke and he has a head injury. Oh, that's lame. So yeah, I could definitely see why some people would be kind of off with that. But I kind of see it as like, even though that they are going to this academy, I think that this is kind of like a progression for them growing up and them getting to have the opportunity to learn some new skills, even though that it does still kind of keep to the kid friendly storytelling that we saw in the last two movies.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I kind of think going back to basics wasn't a terrible idea. In
No, it
Heinz,
wasn't.
in Heinz, I'm saying this now as a kid, I was like, lame. But one of the things they do is like you gotta knock off all those trick plays and whatnot. It's kind of critiquing how over the top it went with the sequel there. So
Yeah, again, just like what I was saying with like Rocky 5, it was trying to bring things back to basics. It's like, hey, we went a little over the top with the second movie. Let's just bring it more grounded in the third movie.
mhm.
And I can see why some people didn't really care for it. I mean, even, worse is like, the old mentor from the first two movies, he passes away and it becomes a really sad moment.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing is, if you love these films for Emilio Estevez, I got some bad news for you.
Yeah, he's barely in it.
He literally filmed his scenes in a week, and he only agreed to was if Disney would fund a movie he wanted to do.
What movie was that?
Uh, Let me look it up real quick. It's nothing that did any popularity.
Well, I mean, if it was 1996, it probably would have been The War at Home,
I think that is the name of it, actually.
which I've never seen and I don't know anything about, so I have no idea how that turned out for him at the end.
Well, the film lost a ton of money, so
Ooh.
there's that.
Oh my gosh. So, okay, let me get this straight. So, he only showed up for a week and the only reason why he did it in the first place was because he wanted to write and direct his own movie. And the movie turned out to be a bomb. Oh man, that's got to be rough.
Yep.
Especially since I'm looking at the box office comparing D3 to The War at Home. So D3 made $22 million and The War at Home only made $44,000. Ouch.
Like, I don't even know how you make that little of money on a film. I mean, normally they make $1 million in the 90s just by opening.
Yeah, and this is a Touchstone film of all things. So it would definitely make at least $1 million. I don't know. I mean, this is something I definitely need to take a look into. I'm looking at what it is currently on Rotten Tomatoes, and it says it's a 60%. So maybe I'll even talk to Aaron, and maybe we can even talk about it in Crystal Skull. We'll just wait and see. So yeah, let's go back into D3. So yeah, there's not really much in terms of what is in D3. I mean, like we said before, it's more grounded and there's less Coach Bombay. But would you say that this is more of a satisfying way to close the trilogy, or did you think that it was already past its point?
I think it kind of makes up for some of the issues that I have with the second film.
Mm-hmm.
Just being more grounded and back to earth, I just think worked pretty well for it. I mean, one thing I kind of find confusing is a lot of people's favorite character is Goldberg, the goalie.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to make him a defensive player in this instead of the goalie, which is just kind of like, he's literally named Goldberg. I don't know if we really needed that subplot.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that working. Somebody who plays defensively, somebody who plays a goalie could play defense. I guess it wouldn't be too different if somebody were to play, as a pitcher and then go to first base. Still tossing the ball, but yeah, I mean, it is kind of in the name, so it could be a little bit on the nose. I could see that.
Another thing I'll point out is there were more cameos in this film, obviously, but my personal favorite one is Paul Correa, who was the captain of the Ducks at the time, makes an appearance.
Oh, cool.
And he's actually my favorite player of all time, so every
That's
time I see that scene, I get a little excited.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. And from what I understand, there was like a interview with the writers where they were saying in an article called 25 Things You Never Knew About the Mighty Ducks Trilogy was that this was supposed to be a darker movie, and the teams that they were supposed to be playing against were the Bulgarians. Is that true?
You know, I've read that. I mean, there were a ton of articles that came out at the 25th anniversary for this, and then again when the NHL team celebrated their 25th year, there was just tons of stuff because the NHL team started to embrace the fact, yeah, we came from a Disney movie. I mean, for a while, there was like no mention of it anywhere. So there's been a lot of interviews here in the recent past that go into it.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, maybe that was like an idea that they had early on, but then they scrapped it because, hey, once again, we have to make it Disney-fied. So,
Exactly.
yeah, it's I can understand that, but I think that we have the final scene in which when, um, you know. Charlie and Orion, spot, Coach Bombay watching the game, and you have the Eden Hall banner with the Ducks logo, and Bombay smiles, and it just closes off right there. I think that's a way. I think that's a good way to satisfy the trilogy.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely a lot more than the animated series.
Oh boy.
Okay, you know what? Let's get this over with. So, yeah, like Clancy said before, the Mighty Ducks animated series was a contract animated series where they had to do it. So nobody wanted to work on it. They had no other choice but to put this all together. It had 26 episodes that range from the 90s, from 96 to 97. And this was kind of like an anomaly for a long time because it didn't air on TV for like 15 so years until we got it on Disney Plus. And so, yeah, there was like, okay, so apparently, I have no idea where they came up with this idea. So it takes place in space. And like you were saying before, Clancy, I mean, once you go to space, you can't go back. So it takes place in an icy planet called Puck World, which creative, I know. We have a reptilian race called the Saurians. And there was a savior by the name of Duck Duquesne who saved everybody. And there's like legends of him and stuff like that. And then you have this group of ducks who are trying to fight off against the Saurians. We have Wildwing, Nosedive, Duke, Mallory, Tanya, and Grin. And we had a few other allies as well. But just the idea of ducks playing hockey to save the universe against reptiles is something that I would have never expected in an animated series based off of a group of rambunctious kids and a washed up has-been of a drunkard hockey player coach coming together and beating all the odds to win championships and games. It's like, where did this come from? Who came up with this idea, and where can I get some?
Exactly. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure they were smoking some wacky tobacco when they were doing this.
Oh my goodness. It's okay. So yeah, I definitely will go more into this when I talk about it in Heroic Gem or Junk. But the people who created this show, I mean, we're talking about the same people who, were involved with shows such as, Transformers Animated and Gargoyles and Batman, the Brave and the Bold, and Ben 10 and Extreme Ghostbusters. It's like, how did this happen?
Especially, you look at the cast they got for this. Like, the cast is very impressive, what they were able to get. And it's like, how did you guys sign on for this? With the exception of Tim Curry, he thought he was signing a contract to be in another live-action movie.
Ooh, Tim Curry and Mighty Ducks. If they would have kept the third idea about, or maybe even the second or third idea about the Russians or the Bulgarians, I would have loved to have seen him being an over-the-top slimy coach. That would have been great. But no, we have to have Tim Curry play as the villain because of course we do. Whoop-de-frickin' do.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, you're right. I mean, you have like an impressive amount of people for, this voice cast. I mean, you have Ian Ziering, who was known at the time for playing as Steve in Beverly Hills 90210. Like, how? And you have the usual like voice actor giants like Jeff Bennett and April Winchell, Brad Garrett. I mean, this would have been around when he was doing Everybody Loves Raymond. And you have Townsend Coleman and Rob Paulson, Frank Welker, even James Belushi appears in this series. Which we're talking about like Saturday Night Live and according to what was it like that other TV show that he was according to Jim. That's what it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're talking about SNL according to Jim James Belushi, and I know he's been in a few animated series like Ah Real Monsters and Hey Arnold, but just the fact that he was able to sign in as the manager of intergalactic duck gang is just crazy to me.
Which I will say his character is the one that does have the few lines that'll make you smile throughout the thing.
Sure, I guess this is like their equivalent of Hans in this movie.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
But you won't laugh at this show. You'll, at best, smile at a couple of the lines, and I'm not sure if they're legitimately funny or if it's just you're so worn down from all the very bad hockey puns throughout that it seems good writing in comparison.
I don't know. All I know is that hearing these familiar voice actors having to give off these awful lines, it's like, guys, you deserve so much better than this. I mean, especially when you have the big juggernauts like Tim Curry, Clancy Brown, and Tony Jay as the villains. It's like, oh man, like I mean, I want to laugh at this, but it's like at the same time, I know that they could do so much better. So yeah, I'll definitely talk more about that later on. But still, it's just, I mean, this is one of those shows that I need to question about how did this exist? But from what you told me, now I know why, because it was a mandate that it needed to exist.
All I'll say is that I hope the actors bought themselves a nice car or something with the money because, ooh boy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with now that it's finally out on Disney Plus, we'll just see how good those residual checks are. Anyway, so right before we conclude things, so now we got to talk about the new Disney Plus series that's going to be coming out as of the recording of this podcast. It's going to be coming out next week. So, Mighty Ducks Game Changers. The only thing that we know about it from like trailers and various announcements is from this description, what it says right here. Now a powerhouse in its division, the Mighty Ducks junior hockey team is selective about who makes the cut. After being kicked out, a 12-year-old boy named Evan, at the urging of his mother, forms a new hockey team of underdogs with the help of the original coach, Gordon Bombay. So apparently the Ducks are just so uptight about who is belonging into the team that there is now a new generation of Mighty Ducks, or like at least similar to what the Ducks were in the first movie, and now they're getting the original coach to come back. So it's almost like a spiritual successor in a way, in which like the original team has gone off so far that they don't have the same integrity and spirit of the original, and so we need to get the original spirit back by bringing back the original coach who was a part of it in the first place.
Yeah, it kind of honestly, what we were saying about the second film, about how they lost their way and whatnot, it seems like that's kind of what they're doing with it.
Very interesting. I'm actually curious about what direction that they're going to go into, but I mean, hey, at least we have people such as Emilio Estevez returning, and even the original creator and writer himself, Stephen Brill, is going to be the main head writer and part of the show running. So, yeah, I'm actually curious to see how that turns up. Anyway, but yeah, I'm sure that maybe at some point in the future, when all the episodes are released on Disney Plus, maybe we'll even talk about the whole thing, or we'll go season by season. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm actually interested in having you back on the show and talking about it.
Oh, definitely. That sounds like fun.
So yeah, any final words to say about the original trilogy right before we conclude?
The originals, I consider it's one of those 90s sports movie classics. I wouldn't say it's as good as The Sandlot because nothing was, but but it's definitely one of the more memorable ones from the 90s. And then the sequels, your mileage is going to vary, but for me, it introduced me to my favorite sport. and I'll always be grateful for that. And really, these were the first hockey films for kids, because before this, you had films like Slapshot, which are definitely a hard R. So this was a great way to be introduced to the sport as a little kid.
Yeah, and it's a shame that hockey isn't as prevalent on kids movies. I mean, the last one that I can think of was like Miracle. That was another Disney movie that came out like almost 15 years ago. But like any that came out more prevalent or more mainstream, I can't really think of it. I can think of a few basketball movies. Like, I mean, they're bringing Space Jam back again. I can think of some Spaceball movies, like we were saying before, like Sandlot, and they've made new versions of that movie. And there's also football. I mean, we've already have our fair share of a lot of football movies for kids, but yeah, nothing really much on hockey.
Yeah, it seems for whatever reason, hockey, the films that they make on it tend to be more towards the R-rated adult crowd than the kids ones, which I feel like there's an audience for the family-friendly ones out there. I mean, just my personal opinion. I still love movies like Goon, so.
Sure. And who knows, maybe Mighty Ducks Game Changers will, like it says in the title, maybe it'll change the game. Like maybe more people would be interested in seeing more family-friendly hockey movies.
Yeah, hope so.
All right. Well, that is it for this episode. So, Clancy, thank you so much for coming on by.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, yeah, why don't you plug and promote your podcast one more time?
So, folks, we have 2 podcasts that I'm currently a part of. The first one is On the House. It's a podcast where we take a look at movies, TV shows, and video games. Because, hey, whatever we want to talk about's on the house. An offshoot of that is we have this thing called watch-alongs, where we kind of review, also give our commentary on animated shorts, live-action shorts. Really fun time. That's probably our most popular videos, actually, but, gotta spread it out a little bit. And I'm also going to be co-hosting a podcast called They're Calling Again. It's going to be taking a look at Frasier. So definitely join us for that as well.
All right, awesome. And as for me, you can find me on Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda. You could check me out on oldschoollane.blogspot.com. You could check me out on Facebook.com/oldschoollane, YouTube.com/oldschoollane. We post our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, and various other places. New episodes of Casual Chats and Old School Lane interviews will go up there first, and then it'll go up in a few days on YouTube. So, yeah, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Let us know in the comments below about your personal thoughts on the Mighty Ducks movies. What were your favorites? What were your least favorite? Are you excited about the upcoming Disney Plus series? How terrible did you think that the animated series was? So, yeah, give us all the feedback. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you around soon, and take care.